Hello there, Lycanthro fans. It's me once again going off the deep end with another bit of news about the Critical Depth series. The first good bit of news, it is coming back very soon. To explain exactly what took so long, I had a problem with three specific character episodes in how they came out versus how they went across on the Twitch streams. Basically, I was trying an experiment to see if I could save some time, and it didn't really pan out. I had pre recorded all the footage for the characters for their runs, and then I had edited it down to basically the intro and ending, the journal cards in between, the boss fights, a bit about how the subs worked, so usually that was covered in about the first or two areas, and any other things that came up that I thought were interesting or amusing. So, just the critical stuff. Anyway, and I would then play the video on Twitch on the live stream, and it would have the normal commentary from me and the chat from the people watching. So far, so good in theory, right? Well, didn't work in practice. For whatever reason, the audio from the game in the Twitch stream came out pretty much non existent. The only things people could hear were my commentary. And that included, unfortunately, the endings, which have no text to them. They're entirely voice recorded. So that just wouldn't do. I went around and around for a long time trying to figure out how to fix this, including taking the original footage and trying to cut it down, and I mean to the frame, and match it up with what went over on the Twitch stream in the hopes that the audio would sync up just right and everything would make sense. I would have normally, if I had recorded this nowadays, just upped the audio on the gaming part, but the problem is I wasn't splitting up my audio from the microphone and the gaming source correctly when I originally recorded. So raising one would have required raising the other, and I would have blasted your ears out with my lovely dulcet tones. I also struggled because there were a lot of great jokes in the commentary, in the chat rather, as usual, and of course I had responses to those jokes, and I really didn't want to lose them. But I kept trying to figure out how to do it all and getting frustrated with it and putting it off to the point where I dreaded coming back to doing it. So ultimately, I knew I had to sacrifice something, and here's what I have decided. I am going to use the original footage that I recorded that has the accurate audio and re-record my commentary over it. Unfortunately, that means the chat log is gone for good from this, and I feel really bad about that, so I'm sorry, but there really wasn't much of a way that I could figure out to put it back in. And even if I could, it would be working on footage that was about, on average, 15 minutes shorter than what was originally recorded, so nothing would have came together correctly. Everything would have been just totally off time. I should mention another wonderful blunder I made. Since I basically broadcasted the game footage as I was playing it in Media Player Classic, I forgot to frame it up properly. So you saw the time bar and the everything in Media Player Classic taking up part of the screen, which meant the game footage was even smaller than normal. So yeah, I just screwed everything up royally there. So this is the best compromise I can do for it because I didn't want to keep having the series linger any longer. So, that's what's going to happen. And this is going to affect the next 3 character videos. And that would be Joe Scullion, Mordred Corp, and one other, which brings us to the second part of this, because I feel like something needs to be said about it, and they are the Soviet diehards. Okay, now, when I was looking over the footage for this, and I remembered the story and the motivations that the diehards had, I realized with current geopolitical events that there was a big ass elephant in the room. Now, I try to do my best not to get into political stuff. I personally don't think it really helps anything other than pissing people off. So, this is about as close as I'm ever going to get to saying anything on it. Between the collapse of the Soviet Union and the release of Critical Depth, there was less than 6 years. The Soviet Union collapse happened on Christmas Day, actually, in 1991, and Critical Depth was released in 1997. Now, in that time, and honestly, even in the 80s and before, we had been having a lot of parody in the United States of the Cold War, and of course we used stereotypes and tropes. I mean, hell, Critical Depth is packed with them, in order to do what we do as Americans, and that's kind of make light of, what would otherwise be a kind of freaky situation, something we may not be able to deal with all that well or have any say in. And this was nothing new at the time. When 1997 came around, there was still a lot of fodder for the Soviet Union and the United States of America and the Cold War and after the Cold War, things like that. Just think of how many novels and movies were published with this kind of theme. So obviously, nowadays we have somebody who, for all intents and purposes, is trying to get the Soviet Union, get the band back together through vile and despicable ways, ways I know in no way support. But I think any jokes made or anything that comes across in the story about the Soviet diehards should really be taken in the intent that Single Track wanted to do. That it was a matter of parody, working with tropes and stereotypes, not unlike any other work of fiction. And of course, how were they to know, what was going to happen, over 2 decades from then? So I do want to say, my heart goes out to the people of Ukraine. I wish them well, and all the best to you. You will endure. But as far as Critical Depth goes, cheesy as it sounds, I think it's best we invoke that old statement, it's only a game. So, with that being said, the Soviet diehards will be the next video up, and just please keep that in mind as you watch the video. No political statements intended, just rolling with the parody. So, that all being said, I want to thank you for listening to this. This will be going up the week before the Critical Depth videos resume. Thank you very much for listening. I thank you for your patience and your understanding. And everybody, take care and keep your head above water until we game again.